I opened the front door and froze. Standing there on my porch at 2 a.m. was my brother, barefoot, shivering with dried blood on his shirt. He whispered my name like it hurt to say it. And all I could think was, "You have some nerve showing up here." The last time I saw him was 3 years ago in a crowded police station, when he looked me dead in the eye and told the officers I was the one who committed the crime he had actually done. I remember the disbelief in everyone's faces, the humiliation of being handcuffed in front of my coworkers, the way my fiancé slowly stepped away from me as if I was contagious. I lost my job, my relationship, and my friends in one night. All because my brother decided his future was worth more than my life. And now he was back, bloody, desperate, and asking for help. If you're wondering why I didn't slam the door in his face, it's because a part of me still wanted answers. But the truth is, the real reason he's here is so much darker than I could have imagined. It started the night I was supposed to get engaged. 3 years ago, I was at the happiest point of my life. I had been dating Ethan for 2 years, and that night we were hosting what I thought was just a small family dinner. He'd hinted it was special, but I had no idea he planned to propose. The house was full, laughter from the kitchen, clinking wine glasses, my mom's homemade lasagna scent filling every corner. My brother Luke was there too. He had always been charming, the golden child, who could make anyone like him instantly. At some point, Luke pulled me aside and whispered, "We need to talk. It's important." I thought he was about to tease me about Ethan or maybe offer some brotherly advice. But his face wasn't playful. It was pale, tense, almost scared. Before I could ask, my dad stood up with a wine glass and tapped it for silence. Ethan got down on one knee. The room erupted in cheers, but I couldn't focus. Luke's words were still in my head. After the proposal, while everyone hugged and congratulated me, Luke cornered me in the hallway. He shut the door and blurted out, "I messed up, badly. I need you to take the blame for something." I laughed because it sounded insane, but he didn't laugh back. His eyes darted to the floor. Apparently, earlier that day, Luke had been involved in an incident. He wouldn't give me details, but he swore it was just a misunderstanding. Except the police might show up any minute. "You're stable," he said. "You've got no record. They'll believe it was a mistake. I can't. If they charge me, my career's over." I told him to get out of my house. That's when his face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "If you don't do this, I swear I'll make sure Ethan finds out something that will make him walk away from you forever." My heart dropped. I had no idea what he meant, or if he was bluffing. But before I could get any answers, there was a loud knock at the door. It was the police. 2 officers stood at my door, their faces neutral but firm. "Are you my name?" one of them asked. Before I could even respond, Luke stepped right next to me, his voice steady. "Yeah, that's her." I remember the confusion flashing through my mind. Why would he answer for me? And then the words I'll never forget. "You're under arrest for criminal damage and assault. You have the right to remain silent." The world tilted. I could hear my mother's shocked gasp from the dining room, Ethan's voice asking what was going on, chairs scraping against the floor. I kept saying there had to be a mistake, that I didn't even know what they were talking about. But Luke just stood there, avoiding my eyes. They put handcuffs on me right there in my hallway, in front of my entire family, in front of Ethan. I remember Ethan reaching out like he wanted to stop them, but then Luke whispered something in his ear. I couldn't hear what it was, but I saw Ethan's hand drop, his expression change. He stepped back. In the police car, my mind was racing. The officers said I'd been identified by a witness in a case involving property destruction and a physical altercation outside a downtown bar. I hadn't been anywhere near that part of the city that day. When we arrived at the station, I asked for a phone call. I dialed Ethan, expecting him to reassure me, to say he'd talk to a lawyer. Instead, his voice was cold. "We need to talk when this is over." Click. That night, I spent 6 hours in a holding cell before they let me out on bail. My parents didn't show up. Neither did Ethan. But Luke, he was there, waiting outside, leaning against his car like nothing happened. "It's better this way," he said. I'll make sure it all goes away, if you just play along. That's when I realized this wasn't panic. This was a plan. The next morning, I went into work like a zombie, barely slept, still wearing the same clothes. My boss was waiting in the lobby. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a termination letter. "We can't have someone with pending criminal charges representing the company," he said, not meeting my eyes. No discussion. No second chance. I walked out, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the envelope. My phone was buzzing, texts, missed calls. Some from coworkers, some from friends, but most from unknown numbers, filled with messages like, "Trash human being," and "Hope you rot in jail." By the time I got home, Ethan was packing a suitcase. "Ethan, please," I started, but he cut me off. "Luke told me everything," he said. "I can't marry someone who hides something like this. What else have you lied about?" I stood there, stunned. "I haven't lied about anything. Luke is." "Stop." He showed me proof. Ethan snapped. He wouldn't tell me what the proof was, just that it was enough for him to leave. I tried calling my parents. No answer. Tried texting my mom. Delivered. No reply. 2 days later, I learned from a mutual acquaintance what proof Luke had given Ethan. Supposedly, security footage of me leaving the bar where the crime happened. Only I wasn't in that part of town that night. Luke had planted me there somehow, and everyone believed him. I confronted him, thinking maybe I could scare him into telling the truth. But when I showed up at his apartment, he was calm, smiling. "It's already done," he said. "If you keep fighting it, you'll just make it worse for yourself. Take the hit for me and I'll make sure the charges disappear." That's when it hit me. My own brother had decided my life was expendable. At first, I thought I could beat him at his own game. I hired a lawyer, a good one, and told him everything. The problem was, without evidence, my story sounded like a desperate attempt to shift blame. Luke had already been to the police and cooperated, painting himself as a concerned citizen who only wanted to help. He'd even told them we'd been at the same bar that night, but I'd stormed out after an argument. Conveniently, the security footage from the bar's exterior had gone missing. The police called it a technical glitch. I called it sabotage. I tried to gather alibis. That night, I'd been at home for most of it, then gone to the grocery store around 9 p.m. But when my lawyer contacted the store, the CCTV archives for that exact date and time were mysteriously unavailable. Friends I thought would vouch for me suddenly stopped answering my calls. One even blocked me. Later, I found out Luke had been visiting people behind my back, telling them I was spiraling and making things up to cover my guilt. The more I fought, the deeper I sank. Legal bills piled up. I burned through my savings in 6 months. My apartment lease ended, and without a job or good references, I couldn't get another. I moved into a dingy room above a laundromat, and through it all, Luke never once broke his mask. To our parents, he was the dutiful son who checked in on me, even though she hates me now. One night, I caught him outside my building, just sitting in his car. When I walked up to ask what he wanted, he rolled down the window and said, "You should be thanking me. This could have been so much worse for you." I wanted to scream, but part of me was terrified because I still didn't know what he'd really done that night, and I was starting to suspect it was much darker than just breaking a few windows in a bar. It happened by accident. I was at a coffee shop, one of the few places I could still go without feeling like people were staring at me. While I waited for my order, I overheard 2 men talking at a table behind me. I wasn't paying attention until I heard Luke's name. "Yeah, man, I can't believe he's still walking free after what happened to that guy," one of them said. My stomach tightened. I turned slightly, pretending to look at my phone, listening. "The bartender swears it was Luke who started it," the other said. "Shoved him into the alley. Next thing you know, the guy's in the hospital with his jaw shattered. But Luke's brother or cousin or something, she's the one who got charged." I froze. I didn't know about anyone being hospitalized. After they left, I pulled out my old laptop, the one I'd been avoiding because it was loaded with bad memories, and started digging. It didn't take long to find a local news article from that night. The headline read, "Man hospitalized after late-night altercation outside bar. Police seek witnesses." There was no mention of Luke. But buried halfway through the article was a line. "The victim, 29, suffered multiple fractures and may require reconstructive surgery." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. This wasn't vandalism. This wasn't some stupid drunken scuffle. This was serious, violent, the kind of thing that could land someone in prison for years. And my brother had handed it to me like it was a minor inconvenience I should take for the team. I wanted to confront him right then, but I stopped myself. I needed proof, real proof, and if Luke suspected I was digging, he'd make sure it disappeared. So I decided to play along. Smile if I saw him, pretend to be over it. And quietly, I started planning how to get to the bottom of what really happened that night. For weeks, I acted like I'd given up. If Luke texted, I replied politely. If our parents invited me to a family dinner, I showed up and smiled through the tension. I even thanked him once for checking on me, just to keep up the illusion. Meanwhile, I was quietly tracking down anyone who might have been at that bar the night of the fight. I found the bartender's name through a mutual acquaintance and messaged him on Facebook under a fake profile. First, he ignored me. Then, after a few days, he wrote back, "If you're asking about that night, I can't talk about it over text. Too risky." We met in a park a few days later. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. "Your brother's bad news," he said. "He came in drunk, picking fights. I cut him off, he got pissed, started trashing the place. This guy, the one who ended up in the hospital, tried to calm him down, and Luke, well, you've read the article." I asked if he'd tell the police. His answer chilled me. I already did. Next day, 2 guys showed up at my apartment. Said they worked for Luke's boss and that it would be in my best interest to forget the whole thing. I've got a kid. I'm not risking it. It was the first time I realized Luke wasn't acting alone. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. "You think you're clever?" Luke's voice, low and calm. "I can smell when you're plotting something. Don't forget. I can still ruin you more than I already have." I hung up without saying a word, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. If Luke had people willing to intimidate witnesses for him, then getting proof wasn't just about clearing my name anymore, it was about staying alive. It happened late one night while I was cleaning out old boxes in my tiny room above the laundromat. Most of it was junk I'd kept from my old apartment. Receipts, random cords, unopened mail. At the bottom of one box, I found a small black USB drive. I didn't recognize it at first, but then I remembered. Luke had borrowed my laptop the week before the engagement party. He said his own computer was acting up and needed to finish a work project. I plugged the drive in. Most of the files were boring, spreadsheets, documents, but one folder was labeled with just a date, 04-17. Inside were 3 short video clips. I clicked the first. My stomach dropped. It was security camera footage, grainy, black and white, showing Luke outside a bar arguing with a man. Within seconds, Luke shoved him hard into the alley. The man fell out of frame, but you could hear the sickening crack of bone. The second clip was even worse. Luke walking back into the bar, grabbing a chair, and smashing a window. The third was me. Or rather, someone who looked like me, walking past the bar on the sidewalk. Only I knew it wasn't me. I recognized the jacket. It was one I'd given to my ex-roommate months earlier. Luke had cut and spliced the footage to make it look like I'd been there right before the fight. This was it, the proof I'd been praying for. But my victory lasted less than 5 minutes. Because when I pulled the drive from my laptop, I noticed my phone had 2 missed calls from Luke and a text. "Funny thing, I think you have something of mine. I'm outside." I froze. The laundromat downstairs was closed. The street was dark. Slowly, I peeked through the blinds. Luke's car was parked across the street. The headlights were off, but I could see the faint glow of a cigarette. He was waiting. I grabbed the USB drive and shoved it into my coat pocket. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure Luke could hear it from across the street. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? Risk them siding with him again? I decided to run. Not thinking, just moving. Down the fire escape, out the back alley behind the laundromat. My sneakers slapped against the wet pavement. Every shadow felt like him. Then I heard it, the crunch of gravel behind me. Footsteps, faster than mine. "Stop," he called, his voice calm but icy. "You don't want to do this." I ducked behind a dumpster. My breath came in ragged gasps. He wasn't slowing down. He knew exactly where I was. I needed a plan. I remembered the convenience store 2 blocks away that had cameras facing the street. If I could get inside, maybe I could record him or at least get witnesses. I sprinted. My coat flapped around my legs, the USB burning against my side. He was close. Too close. Then, just as I reached the store, he appeared in front of the door, blocking it. His face calm, but his eyes sharp. "Hand it over," he said, nodding toward my coat pocket. I shook my head, trying to sound braver than I felt. "No, this ends tonight, Luke." He smiled, the kind of smile that made my blood run cold. "Oh, it already ended," he said, and before I could react, he lunged forward. I barely pushed past him, sliding inside the store, and the automatic door closed just in time. Breathing, hiding behind the snack aisles, I realized one terrifying truth. Luke wasn't just trying to frame me anymore. He was willing to hurt me to protect himself. Hiding behind the candy aisle, my hands shaking, I stared at the USB drive. It wasn't just a file. It was my chance, my only chance, to finally clear my name and stop Luke. But going to the police felt like stepping into a trap. He had already manipulated law enforcement before. How could I be sure this time would be different? I pulled out my phone and searched for the district attorney's office, looking for a detective I could trust. After a few minutes, I found a number labeled Detective Harris, Special Investigations. My heart leapt. I didn't even know if he was real, but I had to try. I called. The line rang, and then, "Detective Harris." I explained everything as quickly and calmly as I could. The USB, the spliced footage, Luke's threats, his manipulation of evidence, and the man who'd been hospitalized. There was silence on the other end. I held my breath. Finally, he said, "We'll need to meet. Bring the drive. And do not go anywhere near him until we have officers present." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. My body was trembling, adrenaline coursing through me. This could work. Maybe I could finally have justice. But deep down, I knew something. Luke wouldn't let me get this far without a fight. He was smart and he always stayed one step ahead. And I had no idea how far he'd go to make sure this night ended in his favor. The next morning, I left my small apartment before sunrise. My plan was simple. Meet Detective Harris at a neutral location, hand over the USB, and finally start untangling Luke's lies. I didn't notice the black SUV parked 2 blocks away. I didn't notice the shadowy figure watching from the corner. When I arrived at the diner where we agreed to meet, my stomach nodded. Detective Harris was already there. A tall man in his late 40s with a sharp gaze that immediately made me feel both safe and exposed. "You brought it?" he asked. I nodded, pulling the USB drive from my coat. "Everything's on here. Luke. He's been framing me for years, manipulating witnesses, even threatening people. This proves it all." He took the drive carefully, slipping it into a protective envelope. "Good work. We'll verify the footage and subpoena any witnesses. This could take him down." Relief washed over me for a moment, but it didn't last. As I stepped outside, the SUV's engine roared to life. Tires screeched. I froze as the vehicle sped toward me. Before I could move, a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me into the alley beside the diner. Heart pounding, I spun around. Luke stood there, calm as ever, smirk playing on his lips. "Did you really think you could do this without me knowing?" he said. His eyes were cold, almost gleeful. "Let me go, Luke," I shouted. "Not until you understand something," he said. "I built this life. I protect it. And you're just collateral. Don't forget it." He let go, but the warning was clear. He knew what I was doing, and he was already planning his next move. Detective Harris wasted no time. Within a week, he had subpoenaed the bar's security footage, interviewed the bartender, and started tracing Luke's connections. For the first time in 3 years, I felt a glimmer of hope. The bartender confirmed everything I had suspected. Luke had caused the fight, and I had nothing to do with it. The hospital records backed up the severity of the attack, and a few reluctant witnesses came forward once they realized the police were serious. For the first time, it felt like justice was possible. But the victory was bittersweet. Luke didn't sit idle. My phone was flooded with anonymous threats. Friends and family started receiving cryptic messages about me. My parents, once neutral, began questioning me again. Even in small ways, Luke's presence loomed over every move I made. One evening, Detective Harris called. "We're close," he said. "The evidence is mounting, but we need to be careful. He's dangerous, and he knows you're working with us." I realized he wasn't exaggerating. Luke had resources, people willing to intimidate and manipulate. Every time I stepped outside, I felt watched. Every phone call made me flinch. Yet, for the first time in years, I felt like I had an ally, someone who believed me. And that tiny ember of hope kept me going. But deep down, I knew Luke would not go down quietly. I thought I could breathe easy once the investigation was underway. I was wrong. One night, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a single photo, me, taken from outside my window. The message on the back was simple. "Stop now, or it won't just be your life at risk." Panic hit me in waves. Luke had always been manipulative, but this was new, direct intimidation, crossing a line I never thought he would. The next day, Detective Harris confirmed my fears. Luke had been cutting off witnesses, threatening them, and even planting misleading evidence to derail the case. He was desperate, and he knew the endgame was near. I received another call from Luke that evening. His voice was eerily calm, like a predator sizing up prey. "You think you've got me cornered? Think again. You've dug your own grave." I realized he had nothing left to lose. Everything he had built, his reputation, his career, even his freedom, was now at stake. And he was willing to destroy anyone in his path, including me. But I wasn't the same person who had been helpless 3 years ago. I had proof. I had allies. And I had the determination to finally stop him, no matter the cost. That night, I made a decision. This ends tomorrow. Detective Harris and I spent days planning. Every move had to be precise. Luke was cunning, unpredictable, and ruthless. One mistake and everything, my safety, the evidence, the case, could collapse. We decided to lure him into a controlled environment. I would contact him, pretending to surrender the USB drive, suggesting I wanted to meet in person. Harris and 2 officers would be nearby, hidden, ready to intervene. The night came. My hands shook as I texted Luke. Almost instantly, he replied, "Finally admitting defeat? Good. See you at the usual spot. Don't be late." The usual spot was a small, dimly lit parking lot near a convenience store. I arrived early, parked my car in the shadows, and waited. Every passing second felt like an eternity. Then I saw him. Luke stepped out of his car, casual, smiling like nothing was wrong. He approached me, scanning the lot, confident I wouldn't try anything. I handed him an envelope, empty. My stomach lurched as he opened it, realizing immediately it wasn't the USB. That's when Harris and the officers moved in. "Freeze!" a voice shouted from behind. Luke spun around, eyes wide. Panic flashed across his face for the first time in years. He tried to run, but the officers blocked every exit. "You're under arrest," Harris said. Luke's smirk vanished. He struggled, cursed, shouted threats, but it was over. For the first time, I felt weight lift off my chest. Years of manipulation, lies, and fear were finally ending. Luke was arrested, charged with assault, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. The hospital records, the bartender's testimony, and the USB footage made the case airtight. For the first time in 3 years, I felt safe. I could breathe. I could finally begin to rebuild my life. My reputation was slowly being restored. Ethan eventually reached out, remorseful but distant, explaining he had been misled, and I realized some relationships couldn't be repaired. My parents were shocked at Luke's full extent of lies and manipulation. They apologized, though the trust lost was deeper than words could fix. I'm back at work, in a new apartment, and cautiously making new friends. Every day is still tinged with the fear that something could go wrong, but I feel stronger. I survived something that could have broken me entirely. So here I am, posting this on Reddit, asking AITA for refusing to help my brother after he ruined my life to protect his own? I didn't abandon him out of cruelty. I survived because I had to, because he left me no choice. And I can't help someone who has spent years trying to destroy me. Sometimes survival isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the only way to hold on to what's left of yourself.